Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to The Wrap, your Friday briefing for the week that was. This week, I'm exploring the latest labor numbers. Korn Ferry buys AMS. Amazon replaces warehouse HR with a chatbot. Another ATS system turns into an ID checkpoint. HR Path gets $1 billion. Two research reports that contradict each other. Pre-passive candidate hiring with Jason Gorham. And 1/3 of young adults are still living with their parents. I'm Mike Wood. Hit the theme song.
It's the Wrap, HR Tech news and shenanigans. It's the Wrap. Here's your host, Mike Wood.
All right. The latest labor numbers are out, and in June, the BLS said that unemployment dropped 1/10 of a point to 4.2%, and payrolls added a soft 57,000 jobs. So this reads like the labor market is still tight. But go to the household survey and you'll find that 507,000 fewer people employed than the month before. Labor force participation fell to 61.5%, the lowest since March 2021. And once you set the pandemic aside, the lowest in about half a century. Gerald Ford was in the White House the last time this number was this low. And here's what I think we're seeing. I think we're seeing immigration enforcement showing up in the data. So when people give up looking, BLS has a bucket for them, discouraged workers. That count didn't move. Neither did the marginally attached. These folks didn't just stop looking. They left the labor force entirely. And one group is walking out in numbers big enough to bend the whole report. The foreign-born workforce is down roughly 1 million people since January, with independent trackers putting the population drop closer to 2 million. And those jobs are not being backfilled. If native-born workers were stepping in, you'd see it. Native participation rising, native unemployment falling, the whole closing. Instead, native participation is flat to falling. Nobody's rushing in. That's the difference between a market that's rebalancing and one that's contracting. This is subtracting with no one behind them in line. And we've seen this movie before. In 2011, Georgia and Alabama took a hard line and watched their crops rot. They got a few locals to fill in at 2 or 3 times the wage, and it wasn't anywhere near enough. Pull these workers out and the work doesn't transfer, it just doesn't get done. So back on June 5th, I wrote about the barbell economy: privatize the top, automate the bottom, hollow out the middle. This is the labor side cut of the same play. The bottom rung isn't being automated away, it's being physically removed, and native workers aren't stepping into it. Same eviction, different doorman. So the unemployment rate is going to keep looking better while the labor market keeps getting worse. So buckle up. Let's move into the week that was HR Tech.
HR Tech news of the week.
All right. First story: Korn Ferry is spending about $1.1 billion to pull the UK-based firm AMS out of private equity and into their own pockets. So Korn Ferry is buying predictability. Now, AMS brings about $650 million in fee revenue, and more to the point, $1.5 billion plus in contracted fees still on the book. A textbook hedge for a firm whose executive search business swings on every market hiccup. And here's the part that recruiters should sit with. A sophisticated buyer just paid $1 billion for 8,000 people whose entire job is managing recruiting, the exact work that everybody keeps on insisting that AI is going to vaporize. So you don't level up by buying a melting ice cube. Read more on this in the newsletter at ilovethewrap.com. All right, next up, my friends at Amazon. Per a Fast Company exclusive, Amazon has basically shipped the customer service death spiral as its HR strategy. It's replaced on-site warehouse HR with its A to Z app and Asa, which workers describe as a little more than a chatbot in company branding. And they've rebranded the whole function as PXT, People, Experience, and Technology, which is the kind of name you give a department right before you delete the people part. Warehouses that once had 3 to 6 HR staff are down to 1 on a good day, with no coverage nights on weekends. And the damage concentrates exactly where you'd fear: accommodations and medical leave. One worker with a concussion got disciplined for working too slowly, while her accommodation sat unapproved for a month because the chatbot generated the wrong form. A stroke survivor was fired for absences after the app kept denying her request. The EEOC has already found Amazon violated the ADA on its warehouse accommodations, and a lawsuit alleges the app isn't even built to allow the interactive dialogue that the law requires. One former investigator's line should hang over every demo that you have where it says AI-powered employee experience. This investigator says, I watched the human get sucked out of the job. Can't get more clear than that. Read more in the newsletter at ilovetherap.com. All right, next story. Employ, the parent of Jazz HR, Lever, and JobVite, is embedding ID.me's identity verification directly into its applicant tracking systems, rolling out to customers in the back half of this year. The stated reason is that AI has made resumes, credentials, and even live interviews forgeable. Employ's own Recruiter Nation research found 23% of recruiters have already hit candidate fraud, and Gartner expects about 1 in 4 applicants to be fake by 2028. This is something that I heard at HR West a couple of weeks ago, is that fraud is a major issue, and even the threat of fraud is slowing things down. So note the pattern, because this is the second major ATS to bolt in the identity checkpoint onto the front of the funnel. Greenhouse did it last year with Clear, and now Employ with ID.me. Different vendors, same conclusion. The application itself is no longer evidence of anything. We spent a decade making it frictionless to apply, and the arms race that followed means that the industry's fix is to make you prove that you're a real person before anyone even reads your resume. Honestly, if that's what finally kills the application bloat, we might come out ahead. Check out more in the newsletter. All right. More funding news, quick money. One deal this week, but it's a big one. Paris-based HR Path, the consulting and outsourcing shop you call when your SAP, Oracle, Workday, Dayforce, or UKG rollout goes sideways, closed a transaction valued near $1 billion, led by private equity firm Ardian. The money funds a global push aimed at the US, Canada, Germany, Nordics, Australia, and the Middle East, which is so many places that it might as well just say everywhere. All right, moving on to some hot takes. I want you guys to check out this great piece from Kevin McDonough on LinkedIn. I included it in this at ilovetherap.com. It's in this week's newsletter. Please check it out on LinkedIn and give him some love. But this jumped out at me because everyone's covering the headline that a federal judge ruled that Workday has to face claims for its AI screening discriminated by disability, race, gender, the whole bit. But McDonough takes cuts right past it. He says the wrong question is AI biased? The right question is, can anyone explain how the decision was made? And so here's his core insight, which I think is exactly right. The AI never has to see a protected characteristic to create legal exposure. It just has to weigh a proxy for one. An employment gap, a graduation year, a job title. The court zeroed in on exactly that, and it declined to dismiss the claim that Workday's tool flags applicants using proxy indicators of disability, like a 2-year gap, which could be cancer treatment or caregiving, or could be a sabbatical. The algorithm can't tell the difference. That's the problem. And so unlike a Boolean search string, where you can read and argue about, the model's weighing is invisible. When a recruiter passes on a gapped resume, you can ask them why. When an algorithm does it, the reasoning is buried. Hiring needs more real transparency right now. That is the biggest question that is facing our industry right now, is how are you actually grading these applicants? Couple cool research stories that came out this week, and they're actually contradictory. So let's show both sides. So first, Stanford, I've seen this all over LinkedIn. The headline making the rounds is that AI hiring tools are biasing job decisions. But the actual paper, if you dive into it, is called Algorithmic Monocultures and Hiring. And that gap is the story. So researchers, including Percy Liang and Dan Jufkowski, I'm going to butcher these names, analyzed 4 million applications screened by a single vendor. The real finding isn't that the robots are racist. It's that when everybody rents screening from the same vendor, you don't get rejected by a company, you get rejected by the market. 4% of applicants to 10 jobs got flagged for rejection for all of them. That's higher than by chance. The racial bias angle is real, but it doesn't carry all the weight. It only services job by job. It's one vendor, and they can't say why those people are being rejected. So the takeaway that I want you to take away is that you have to stand by your hiring tool. That liability is yours, not the vendor. Now, the other side of the ledger is that RAMP's economics lab dropped a working paper cutting the exact opposite way. They're pairing spend data with Revelio workforce records across 21,000 plus firms, and they found that AI adopters actually grew headcount 10.2% over 2 years, with entry level growing faster, up 12%, which is a direct shot at my own narrative that AI eats the bottom rung first. So I'll own that, but take it with a grain of salt. The gains show up only for the top third by AI spend. Causation is shaky. These adopters were already bigger and faster growing, and Ramp sells to these firms. So always have a little bit of skepticism when you look at a vendor-sponsored research survey and some of the questions that they ask. So check out both these research reports. They're in the newsletter. I love the wrap.com and also up on LinkedIn. All right. I have a couple really good interviews for you guys today. So the podcasts that came out this week are some good ones on Totally Talent on HR.com. So first, Jason Gorham, pictured here, right there. Back in 2003, Jason posted a job, got 100 mismatch applicants, quit in frustration, and went on to invent programmatic job advertising. So that's, if you hate programmatic job advertising, that's the guy you want to hate. So he later licensed his technology to LinkedIn and Indeed, and he's back in the business now with a company called Talent XI. And his argument is that the job board model he helped fund or help build is broken. We get into what comes next. True programmatic advertising for talent. Amazon DSP data, pre-passive candidates. What is a pre-passive candidate? Jason, tell us what this pre-passive candidate is.
I said, we can reach pre-passive candidates. And he said, I've never heard of a pre-passive candidate. And I said, exactly. I said, this example blows my mind. So hypothetically, a nurse goes into Amazon, right? They are getting ready to get I don't know much about healthcare, but they're getting their license to become an RN. They are searching a book because they want to purchase that book. We serve them a job ad to join us, to join our healthcare or staffing company. It doesn't matter to us. We serve them a job ad. They click on it. It's top of the funnel, which is a pre-passive candidate that hasn't even entered the workforce.
She didn't even know she needed that job until you put it out in front of her.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I thought passive was cool back in the day. Pre-passive. I was like, wow.
Forgot to put myself back on screen there for a second. Check that out over on hr.com and the Totally Talent podcast. Also, I talked to Stefan Rivard, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hiring Branch, about how the resume is broken and everyone knows it. Check out a clip from that interview. I'm glad you brought up AI interviews, because that technology has seemed to be like the low-hanging fruit that every startup is now trying to get into. There's probably like 30 different providers. The problem I see is that yes, AI interviews should be taking over some of the process. It should be especially screening. Like if you can get rid of phone screening, great. But they all look like a wrapper around ChatGPT, and they all just look like they're using the existing technology and they just threw a fancy name on it. And it's something that, like, let's say Microsoft or any of these, the big players will offer for free soon.
Yeah, and I think, you could probably do it on yourself. Like you could probably vibe code it with Claude Code, like, an interview tool. And to your point is that they're all living on top of an LLM of some sort that you create prompts around. And as we know, like, all these LLMs are just phenomenal, but they're only good as the person who drives that machine. And when you come to an interview tool or an AI tool, like it's got a whole bunch of hallucinations.
All right, check that out on hr.com. There's a couple of worth your click stories that I want to bring to your attention this week. So first, TechCrunch is keeping a running tally of the big name tech firms that cut staff this year and blamed AI. So it's roughly 120,000 tech jobs this year. But the list includes Microsoft, Oracle, Block, Amazon, Meta, PayPal, a dozen more. And per Challenger Gray and Christmas, AI was the most cited reason for the worst single month for tech cuts in years. But here's why it's worth a click and not just a doom scroll. The tell is the pattern, not the number. These are companies posting record revenue while cutting headcount and crediting AI for both. So check out this full list. It's linked in the newsletter and up on TechCrunch. Yeah, that's where it is. TechCrunch. Also, not surprising. A third of adults under 35 are living with their parents. So we're going right back to 2020 pandemic peak, where about 25 million people per a realtor.com analysis. And this was in the New York Times this week. So the reflexive read is that a housing story. It's roughly 70% of these young adults that are employed, and a rising share hold degrees. But here's the thing: they're employed and they still can't afford to move out. Both links are in the newsletter. I hope you check it out. That's it for this edition of the Wrap. I'm back from the woods of Vermont, and I want you to walk away that the headline number said that the labor market got tighter. Underneath, 500,000 people left, pushed out at the bottom, not automated out. And at the top, the layoff announcements are quietly rebranding ordinary cost cutting as an AI revolution. Same economy, two different stories, and the official dashboard shows green through both. So this week, when you read a number about the labor market, the unemployment rate, a company's AI headcount story, strong jobs report, whatever, ask what's underneath it. Who left? Who got removed? Who's telling you it was progress? Because the rate can keep looking better while the thing it's measuring gets worse. If you're not subscribed to the free newsletter, head over to the ilovethewrap.com. It's new every Friday. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.